It is a new day. A new government is here. The phrase I keep hearing is President Tinubu and Vice President Kashim Shettima have their work cut out for them. It may sound cliche, but it's absolutely true. There's a lot to unpack when it comes to Nigeria's issues with security, the economy, inclusivity, healthcare, education, unity. It's a lot. And we're already beginning to see the first impacts, if you like, of the policies of the Tinubu administration. I'm considering a life without fuel. Not sure how I'm going to make that work, but I'm considering it. We'll talk more about it with our guest during the interview. Meanwhile, President Tinubu has hit the ground running, and we will update you on all his activities on our Abuja Rap. This is Dateline Abuja. Hello and welcome to Dateline Abuja. I am Kayla Megwa. It's time for our Abuja Rap, a look at the major stories from Nigeria's presidency in the past week.
President Bola Tinubu arrives to presidential villa on his first day of work, hours after he took the oath of office as Nigeria's 16th president. President Tinubu, who arrived from the Defense House, is welcomed by the Vice President, Senator Kashim Shettima, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, the Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, the Group CEO of NNPC Limited, Mr. Mele Kyari, among others. Meanwhile, the Group CEO of NNPCL, Mr. Mele Kyari, hailed the President's removal of fuel subsidy, announcing that the company is owed 2.8 trillion naira by the federal government.
We continue to support the subsidy from the cash flow of the NNPC. That is, when we net off our fiscal obligations of taxes and royalty, there is still a balance that we are funding from our cash flow. And that has become very, very difficult and affecting our other operations. I'm very convinced today that the country can no longer fund this subsidy bill and they will not be able to pay NNPC. And therefore, we are pleased to note Mr. President's commitment to elimination of this subsidy because they can't afford it anymore.
Keeping with his promise to hit the ground running from day one with his principal, President Bola Tinubu, Vice President Kashim Shettima arrived on this first day of work at the Vice Presidential wing of the State House in Abuja. Mr. Shettima told State House correspondents that the Tinubu administration is committed to ensuring a better country for all Nigerians. He also reaffirmed the need for the fuel subsidy removal and collapsing multiple exchange rates.
The 40% of Nigerians benefit very little from the fuel subsidy. And we know the consequences of unveiling a masquerade. We'll get payouts opposition from those benefiting from the oil scam, fuel subsidy scam. But where there is a will, there is a way.
President Bola Tinubu has met with security chiefs for the first time since his assumption of office, demanding security agencies strengthen coordination and not work at cross purposes. At the end of the meeting, attended by the Chief of Defense Staff, Service Chiefs, the Inspector General of Police, and the heads of intelligence agencies, the President disclosed his own philosophy to dealing with security issues, which is the adoption of contemporary security measures to advance the country's security fortunes. The National Security Advisor, General Babagana Mungunu, who spoke to the press after the meeting, disclosed that the President demands frequent consultations in tandem with the demands of the nation, promising to embark on a lot of reforms. President Bola Tinubu has met with the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Abdul Rashid Bawa, and the chief executive officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, Mele Kyari. Emerging from the private meeting in the president's office, the EFCC boss declined to give out any details, but simply told the media that he was there to brief the president as he walked away, accompanied by the NNPCL Group CEO. Meanwhile, the president also held a bilateral meeting with the special envoy of the Chinese President Xi Jinping and the vice chairman of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, Peng Xinghua. The Chinese president, represented by the vice chairperson, Standing Committee of National People's Congress, said the two countries at present had good bilateral relations and economic cooperation, noting that Chinese companies were doing well in Nigeria's railways, roads, hydropower, and the free trade zones. The meeting between the federal government and the labor unions over fuel subsidy removal has ended without a consensus. The meeting, which began at about 4 p.m. at the presidential villa, had in attendance representatives of the federal government, including the president's spokesperson, Mr. Dele Alaki, as well as the governor of the central bank, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, the NNPCL Group CEO, Mr. Mele Kyari, former NLC President, Mr. Adams Oshomole, and members of the Nigeria Labour Congress, led by the national president, Mr. Joe Ajero, and the president of the TUC, Mr. Festus Osifo. After several hours of meeting, the NLC demanded that the federal government go back to the status quo by reversing the price of premium motor spirit before resuming negotiations with the labor unions.
Labour is concerned, we didn't have a consensus in this meeting. You don't put the partner, you don't ask him to negotiate under gunpoint. If we agree for a meeting by 2 today, and in the morning, you come out with price modulation, how can you fix price in a deregulated market? The prayers of NLC is that we go back to status quo, negotiate, think of alternatives, and all the effects and how to manage the effects this action is going to have on the people, if it is an action that must take off.
Welcome back. It was colorful, it was historic. It happened right here at the Eagle Square in the nation's capital. It saw the farewell to the old and a welcome to the new. The inauguration of the 16th Democratic President of Nigeria. We were there for all of it. This report takes us through the historic events that ushered in the Tinubu presidency. Former President Muhammadu Buhari bids farewell to Nigerians as he ends his 2 terms as President of Nigeria. His motorcade leaves the Eagle Square straight to the presidential wing of the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, where a presidential jet is waiting for him. The Presidential Guards Brigade is also on ground. The former president's family members are the first to arrive at the airport, followed by some of his former cabinet members, including the former vice president, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, and his wife, Mrs. Dolapo Osinbajo, as well as former aides. Then former President Buhari shows up. Only a few security attachés are around him, and the usual restrictions by security aides seem a bit relaxed. As former President Buhari exchanges last-moment pleasantries before boarding the aircraft. Professor Osinbajo and some members of the Buhari cabinet share their experiences in the last 8 years.
The fact that one was able to go through this period and we're leaving hale and hearty and all is well, I want to just thank God for that.
Very good. I had a president that was supportive, even when we have industrial unrest and strikes.
We've come to pay our farewell to His Excellency former President Muhammad Buhari and former Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo. It's been a great honor and privilege serving under his administration, and it's a very sober moment for all of us, but we wish them the best that life can offer.
Amid cheers, Professor Osinbajo and his wife also board their aircraft. By 12:30 in the afternoon, Mr. Buhari's aircraft is airborne, and about an hour later, he arrives at Umar Musa Yar'Adua International Airport in Katsina State, where he is warmly received by the newly sworn-in governor of the state, Mr. Diko Rada, and other sons and daughters of the state, before boarding an Air Force helicopter to proceed to Daura, his hometown.
I, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, do solemnly.
Meanwhile, with the inauguration of President Bola Tinubu in full swing, some Nigerians have expressed hopes and expectations for his administration, especially in the areas of the nation's economy and security.
He needs to really work on is the security architecture of Nigeria. And as soon as he's able to succeed with that, I think we need to look inwards. We need to go back to agriculture. We need to go back to doing those things that Nigerians are known for.
He himself is a visionary with an agenda, and he knows how to attract foreign investment and and make Nigeria stable enough for all foreign investments, because the world is right now globalized and everyone's counting on each other for support.
I believe must handle quickly the issues of energy, the issues of subsidy, the issues of education, and there must be low-hanging fruits for Nigerians. Nigerians must, from this afternoon, know that one whose actions and inactions are centered around the people is in charge.
The future of Nigeria is at stake, so much is expected from this administration.
The government should also focus on bringing out the best in Nigerians. Nigerians are the smartest people in the world, but they just need someone like President Tinubu that will bring out the best in them. He knows how to do it. When he came to Lagos, he did it for Lagosians, and I know by the grace of God, he's going to do it for Nigerians.
As people from across the world watch with bated breaths, the Tinubu administration grabs a hold of the reins of power as he and his vice president, Kashim Shettima, take their oath of office, administered by the Chief Justice of Nigeria.
I, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, do solemnly swear.
The national and defense flags are lowered and replaced with new ones, indicating the transfer of power to President Bola Tinubu. President Tinubu takes a ride around the Eagle Square to inspect the guards and appreciate the guests. Next is the military parade in slow and quick time. This is followed by an aerial display by the Air Force. The already colorful ceremony is further embellished with dance and acrobatics displays. Then it's time to hear from the new president. His speech begins with the unity of the country as he extends a hand of friendship to his opponents in the presidential election.
My supporters, I thank you. So who did vote for me, I thank you as well. I extend my hand across the political divide. I ask you to grasp the national affinity and brotherhood. For me, political polarization has faded away. All I see here are Nigerians. As long as this world exists, Nigeria shall exist.
Perhaps the high point for many is his stance on the fuel subsidy regime, security, and the foreign exchange rate.
We shall reform both our security doctrine and its architecture. No provision is there for fuel subsidy. The fuel subsidy is gone. The central bank must work towards a unified exchange rate.
National flag! Peace and arms!
The Buhari administration is now a matter of history. The former president has maintained that he plans to stay away from the issues of governance in the country. President Tinubu has his job cut out for him already. The clock is ticking and Nigerians are waiting. President Tinubu, during his inauguration speech, emphasized the need for unity of all Nigerians despite their differences. He also emphasizes the need for a single exchange rate and an end to the fuel subsidy regime, statements which have caused ripple effects across the country since the inauguration. President Tinubu insists that his intentions and that of his government are noble and says Nigerians should expect to reap the benefits of these changes very soon. My guest on the program is a political analyst, Mr. Jide Ojo. He helped us unpack what has just happened, the ripple effects on several sectors, what balls were dropped by the previous administration, what challenges is the Tinubu government bound to face, and what can they do about those challenges? Should they draw a hard line on issues or take it slow? What kind of country are we going to be living in for the next 4 years? Should we brace up for more impact, as we've seen with the exponential rise in the cost of fuel following the removal of fuel subsidies? Is this helpful in the long run? Can we survive the impact? And what's next? Mr. Jide Ojo, welcome to Dateline Abuja.
It's a pleasure. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Still considering a life without fuel.
No, we will survive last.
We will?
We will survive.
The question everyone is asking, of course, many people have said the subsidy regime has come to an end. But after the president's statement during the inauguration, this hike in the price of fuel was immediate. And people have wondered, okay, yes, we wanted this done, but is this the time for it? What palliatives are in place for us to be able to bear the effect of this? The market forces, because the idea of removing subsidies, that market forces will ultimately drive the price down. So what do we do in the meantime before these market forces come together? That's the dilemma that a lot of Nigerians are in right now. And what do you make of that?
The truth, and I may sound like an aristocrat, I'm not one. I'm also heavily indebted, but people should know that when people like us are talking, we are talking from informed position, not on emotional basis. Now, look at it. There is no budgetary provision. So if you say extend, that means they have to go borrowing to fund that extension. And we know if our 3.36 trillion ended on May 31st, it then means that 7 months will cost us approximately 4 trillion. So if you are saying let it be extended to December, and what is the state of our infrastructure? You find out that the infrastructure are largely dilapidated. A newspaper report has it that Buhari left behind about 16 trillion naira worth of infrastructural deficit. That's if you quantify the amount for those. So the issue is the Petroleum Industry Act has said immediately after the signing into law, petrol subsidy should go. People cried out at that time, no, this is dangerous. Oh, APC will lose election. So what did the outgoing administration do? They said, okay, we will find the money to extend 18 months. Are we not prepared enough? 18 months of stopgap. We were told repeatedly. But the one shock I had is that my own understanding is effective July 1. But maybe that 1 month, maybe it will have made a difference, maybe not. So the Petroleum Industry Act already said there will be no more subsidy. And let me educate us about the dividends. The dividends far outweigh the negative effects. For instance, we have Dangote who braved all odds to establish a $18.5 million is it 18.5 billion or $5 million worth of refinery, the biggest in the world. But note, is going to be sold crude in dollars. It will also factor the refinement and all of that. So we might not even get the PMS, even if Dangote come on stream at a very cheap price. But what it does, what the regulation does is that those who have been given licenses, who have not found the courage to build their own refineries, will now say, okay, this is a profitable business, so let's make comments. Bua is building 200,000 worth of refinery in maybe Port Harcourt or Bayelsa. There are a couple of other Nigerians who are doing same. So in the short period, you and I will feel this pinch. But in the mid to long-term period, the price will crash.
This particular move that we've seen right now and the ripple effect is giving many Nigerians the idea that this government is going to take a very hard line on things. And they've started with, look, subsidy regime is gone. You know, we heard the president say during his inauguration. Another thing that we've heard the president talk about is a single foreign exchange. Is that something that can be done? And what impact would that have? Would it be, if they take a hard line on that, for instance, as they've done with fuel subsidy, what kind of impact would we be seeing on the Nigerian public?
Well, it's going to be beneficial, but I doubt if it can be achieved. Because we are not producing, we are not producing, we are consumptive. So there is every burden on our forex to import textile from China, to import electronics. If everything is collapsed into one, so what you get from parallel market is the same as you get from official market. The fraud that is inherent in it, the so-called round tripping.
But you said that you don't think this is going to be possible.
Because of the human factor. Because of the human factor. See, nobody wants their honey pot to be broken. And this is how many bankers are surviving. Many bankers
are accusing bankers of round tripping.
Of course, many of their staff does. If you're very influential, all you just need is to have a bureau to change somewhere, and then you apply, you know the rules, and how to bend the rules. Look, that's why this is not the first time we've made an attempt at having a unified exchange rate. It has never worked. You know, there was a time the CBN said they are not going to sell foreign currencies to the bureau de change because of this same issue of round tripping. But after a while, they still have to do it because the bankers find a creative way around it. They know the rules. They know what the books. How much do I have that I want to go and get forex? So what I'm saying is, if this administration can get it done, it will be beneficial to the economy. But I really doubt if that could be enforced. The president is a chartered accountant, but since when did they practice? You know, maybe 30, 40 years ago, in his days at Mobi producing, things have really changed. Yes, the deputy is a former banker, but can he lord it over his, Jimovia is his boss.
I was going to tell you that we have a government where the both of them are bankers.
Yes.
It's almost like when President Buhari came into power, where everyone was military background. Yeah. He's going to have a tough stand. But let's move on to other areas that we feel like, I feel like we should talk about with the Tinubu administration. The areas where the Buhari government dropped the ball. Mm-hmm. And what the Tinubu administration should be looking out for so they do not drop same balls or get it worse.
So community policing, state police with parameters set out as to which area. So, Killer, why should face off between husband and wife be taken to a federal police? Or, somebody, a public fight somewhere, and then you take him to a federal police. The people of those state communities know themselves better. If a state police...
So localize it.
Localize it. Mm. That is the best way to solving the problem of bandits. Localize it. If you do, and you tell them, this is areas that federal police will operate. So when it's issue of economic crimes, sabotage, issue of high-profile criminality like insurgency and all of that, that's what happens in the U.S. So we have the local sheriff, we have state police, we have federal policing system. And that's what should happen. However, I am saying with a caveat, don't force any state that doesn't have the resources. Unless you quickly deal with constitutional alteration to allow for state police and spell out areas where state police will operate, areas where federal police will. Right now, we have police that is under 400,000, policing a country of over 200 million. It doesn't make sense.
Well, Mr. Jidojo, there is a lot to unpack, and I'm sure this is a conversation that's going to have to continue. But I want to thank you very much for making out the time to be with us on Dateline Abuja, and good luck with all that you have ahead of you.
Thank you very much. I wish you all the best, too.
Thanks to my guest and to everyone who spoke to us today on the program. It's a dicey one, isn't it? The removal of fuel subsidy is something many Nigerians have clamored for, mostly because we didn't understand it. There was no actual transparency in the process, and it's been widely described as corrupt. But its removal at this time is also being criticized by many. The timing, the market forces needed for it to be successful, the palliatives needed to cushion the impact of this fuel price hike. from 185 naira to 530 naira is serious. Makes you rethink your priorities. There are fewer cars on the streets of Abuja since this price hike. I've seen more bicycles and more walkers. What's next is security agencies have to make the streets safe from criminal elements, so we don't leave our cars at home only to be robbed by hoodlums on the streets. That's Dateline Abuja this week. Please let us know the happenings in your neighborhood using the social media handles showing right now on your screen. Thank you so much for watching. I am Kayla Magwa. See you next time.